Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining and welcome to episode 7 of Let's Talk About Music. Today, I'm here with Eric Scott Breding, lead singer of HellBelly. He's got a new solo record coming out. And Tony DeLisio, you know him from Mechanism and Sons of Mercury. Amazing guitar player. I got to hang out with Tony at the Michael Schenker show down in Tacoma. You guys opened for Schenker. That was a cool show.
That was a cool show.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thanks for coming out.
Thank you. Thanks for having us, bro.
No, my pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, amazing. You bet. So Eric, tell me about the new record you got coming out. Is this
it's the record I've always wanted to make. You know, I've been doing this for decades, and I don't think my skill level was up to par with where I want. It's kind of like when George Lucas made the movies and wanted to wait for technology, I guess. But then he could have waited a little longer, maybe. But my skill levels were, I wanted to make just a good rock Beatles based record, the Kinks based kind of record. And as we all know, that takes like superior songwriting,
Yeah.
And so I finally felt through COVID and the break that HellBelly had that all these songs, they kind of just came out of me. And so while that break was going on, if you want do you want to know the story?
Yeah, go for it.
So what happened was I wrote all these songs, and about 15 songs. I had some old ones too, and I thought, HellBelly's doing a little break. Why don't I think about recording these? And coincidentally, Kurt Vanderhoof from Metal Church, he was looking for a singer for his band Hall of Flame. And so I heard about it and I sent my stuff in just thinking, hey, that might be a cool gig. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I started striking up a relationship with him, and it ended up being where, I recorded some stuff for the Hall of Flame kind of demo stuff to see how it would sound. And they didn't end up going with me. They ended up, going with somebody else that fit what they were doing better. And, but the demos they had recorded like blew me away. So what I ended up doing is calling Kurt back down in LA and saying, hey, can I come down there and record a rhythm section? And he said, well, why don't you send me some of these demos? And he calls me back like an hour later and goes, did you write all these songs or did somebody help you? I wrote all of them. And he kind of tooted my horn a little bit, made me believe in myself a little more, because he was very adamant about how good the music was. So he said, hey, I want to produce it. And I said, really? And he goes, yeah, let's do a record. So we ended up using studio musicians down in LA. I went down there a couple times and I did the vocals up here, but I gave him about 20 songs. He kicked my butt, would throw, like I give him 5 songs. He'd throw 4 of them away. He'd throw my babies away and keep the ones I didn't even like, And then, that process. And I let him do what he did and pretty much take control of the record. And I went to him and I said, I want a Wallace sound, Beatles kind of Euro sounding orange amp behind me, sounding record with a lot of harmonies and a lot of melody, not too aggressive, but still a good rock record with attitude. And he said, I've never got a chance to do that. Let's do it. And so, we tracked it all, we mixed it, and it got a couple singles out, and the full record comes out April 14th. So we're excited about it. And then I went and hired a band on top that does it live now. So, which is totally a different experience, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy, something I'd never done. So
nice.
Yeah.
So, Tony and Tony, you too, Eric. Are you guys like born and raised in Seattle area? Or have you guys lived here your whole life? Or where were you originally from? Tony, I think you were from Alaska, weren't you?
I'm from Alaska. Yeah, I was born there and raised there, and moved down here shortly after getting out of high school to pursue my rock and roll career. I ended up getting recruited by a band called Gypsy Rose. That was I actually replaced Jerry Cantrell in that band.
I remember Gypsy Rose, and I remember the demos that you sent me.
Yeah,
of the Gypsy Rose stuff too. Yeah,
I'm sorry, that was just kind of a culture shocking thing, right? Coming from Alaska down here, and then just getting springboarded into a real popular band. I don't know, that that probably wasn't good for me. It probably gave me a unrealistic expectations of the music business in general from that point forward. You know what I mean? Like that band was crazy. They had a full road crew. They had a fucking hairdresser, makeup people, publicist. You know, I wasn't even drinking age yet, and all that was going on. So, but as much promise as the band had, we were a metal band. Once grunge set in around here, labels came and talked to us and stuff. They're like, yeah, guys, we can't sign anything with grunge, man, period. Like, you get to go to LA or Europe or something. You're a great band, but you're not going to do anything out of here. And we were like, you know, poor as shit. So we weren't going anywhere. So, you know, but great times, man. Great times.
Yeah. I had the same experience. I moved over from a little town called Wenatchee.
Huh? I'm on.
So I grew up there, and like literally right out of high school, I moved over here thinking I was going to be in a ton of bands. And I played in a lot of really crappy metal bands here. And, but I mean, nowhere near your guys' level. And what about you, Eric? What about you, E?
I'm from Olympia, Washington. I grew up, but I actually grew up in Lacey. So when you think of Ole, you think of the punk rock, you know, K-Rock and the Riot Girls and, you know, Fitz and Nirvana and all that. But I was raised in Lacey, and Lacey's kind of this bit, it's military, right? So it's a bit transient. So we got into this like funk punk thing really young, and it was because, you know, the Peppers had like, you know, Uplift Mofo Party Plan out, you know, or Freaky Styley, the early stuff, you know, or Fishbone stuff, you know. And so we just were immediately bit by that, and we couldn't get any shows because of all the, you know, punk rock around us and the metal around us, the Death Squads and the Forced Entries and all that. So we started putting heavy riffs in it, and so we could get some shows. But our main thing was always was funk, you know. And so we kind of joined the Sweaty Nipples, Rhino Humpers, Supersonic Soul Pimps vibe, you know what I mean? That was kind of our Seattle cut, right? You know, so that's what I did in the 90s.
That's cool.
You know, a lot of shows, man. It was a lifestyle, right, Tony? It was just like, that's what everybody did. You know? Everybody just went to shows. If you weren't playing one, you were going to one, you know?
And the funny thing, like what I love about Seattle and the culture is everybody was hoping everybody else would make it. Whereas it wasn't a competition. Everybody was really rooting for each other.
Right.
And I saw so many shows where it's, you know, the bass player got sick, so they grabbed the bass player from Candlebox to fill in, and our drummer never made it, so the opening drummer is going to fill in for us and use his kit. And it's just like, it was that level of camaraderie, and everybody was really kind of rooting for the scene and not just for themselves. And it still feels that way to a large degree. That's what I really love about all of the musicians. And that's a lot of the reason why I wanted to do this, is because there's a level of friendship and love between all of, you know, the group, and it's a huge group, you know. My dog.
There's no denying the fact, Tony would probably back this up, but if you play for a certain amount of time, there's no way you're not going to meet the main players. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it is not. When I remember when I was younger thinking, you open the Rocket and you think this is just like endless and abyss, you know? But if you realize most of those guys were all in 6 bands, 7 bands.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know?
Yeah. A drummer in Seattle is worth his weight in gold.
Oh my gosh. Right.
Yeah.
who's in less than 10 bands. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, I've had a couple of those drummers. Like Daryl Williams was in Mechanism for a while. Fantastic drummer. But he was in like literally 8 or 9 bands. So after a certain point, trying to book a show becomes very, very difficult, right? Because it's like, hey, we got this chill thing. We're opening for Iron Maiden. No, just kidding. But, you know, oh, I'm sorry, my foreigner tribute's playing a bar mitzvah that day, you know. And you know, but it's cool. You know, still wonderful. I got a great Daryl Williams story if you'd like to hear it.
Yeah.
Mechanism, when we put out our first full-length record, we teamed up with Window Pane and some other bands, and we were the first local bands to ever sell out the Showbox market, which was really neat, right? The drummer guy that we had playing with us, we knew we had the CD release coming up and everything, and he missed numerous sessions to get his drum tracks done. We recorded like all the rest of the tracks with electronic drums, and then instead of the normal way you do the drums first, right? So we were doing the drums in a real studio, and then this guy, anyways, the guy was a real close friend of mine. I'm not going to say his name because this isn't really positive, right? But in any event, I was the last guy, lobbying for the dude to stay in the band, and everybody was just burnt out, and came down to where the tracks got mixed and everything. And he wasn't happy with his performance on the drums. He said, "We can't release this." And we were all like, "What do you mean we can't release this? We have a CD release party here. Like, people have bought hundreds of tickets for. There's no changing this or whatever." So we had a bunch of stuff lined up after that, right? We weren't just going to do a CD release and then sit on our hands. So I called up my buddy Johnny Smokes. I'm like, "Man, we're in a pinch. We need a fucking A-list drummer like that can learn our shit and do it." He's like, "Daryl Williams can do it." And I was like, "Well, our next gig's in like a week." And he's like, "No problem." And I was like, of course, skeptical as shit, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
So we met with Daryl, and he's like, "Oh, give me the CD." So he took the CD home. I think we jammed 4 days later, played the whole set. He knew the whole fucking set. I mean, there was little stuff where he improved on it, obviously, over time.
Yeah.
But he played the whole set, and it was kind of shocking. So we played the gig the next weekend. The following weekend, we had Kelly Gray come in and retrack all the drums for the album with Daryl. So 2 weeks after he's been in the band, he's the guy that's actually on the Shadows and Dust album, which is fantastic drumming as far as I'm concerned. So
yeah,
he can be in 10 bands if he wants, because that's a fucking rock star right there.
Yeah.
Well, that took care of the guy not digging his tracks problem.
Sure did. Yeah, then strangely enough, he was super pissed because we replaced him on the tracks. So
right.
Well, what can you do?
He's like, "Oh man, I sound great."
Yeah, I'm sure though, drummers are always very, I mean, at least in my experience, drummers are kind of hard to find one that you can that's probably going to be around for a very while, because there's always something, right?
I think every drummer, I mean, they hit things for a living, so they're all a little fucked up. Every one of them.
There you go, man. I like the Noel Gallagher thing. They're like monkeys that kind of just.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all a little fucked up, right? That's kind of why we do this thing. But
no disrespect to drummers. I didn't mean that. I'm a wannabe drummer, so I respect them. But I can say it right here, HellBelly wise. It is no secret who doesn't get along in HellBelly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah,
drummers are the bane of my existence, man.
Yeah, well, you guys sure are a fantastic band, and I'm so excited you're back in action, brother.
Yeah,
yeah,
for sure. Yeah,
thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think I've seen you guys twice. But
awesome.
But I've seen your name on a ton of bills, which is fantastic. Yeah. The more I can see a band, and again, for doing, like, one of the things I loved about doing this is I can try and get you guys some exposure. I mean, there's not a lot of people looking at this yet, and they're getting better with each one, but I want to celebrate, your guys' bands. I want to celebrate the people I have on and say, hey, you know what? There's a great local scene. Go check out these bands.
Thank you. We
absolutely
need it. And I've noticed that, dinosaurs like us, you come from playing a show and hopefully 20 people show up, maybe 5 will buy your tape or your CD, and maybe one of them will listen, and maybe 1% of those will actually like it, right? So when I get a video that gets 800 people that look at it, that blows my mind. Yeah. When people go, "Oh, you don't have thousands and thousands of views." Well, no, I have an organic. Even if an organic 100 people look at it, I know every one of those people that looked at it because I see their faces at the shows.
Yeah.
So what you're doing is huge and awesome, because it's, rock and roll music needs this,
It's, yeah. I mean, rock and roll was like the most important aspect of my life since I was about 3.
Right.
The first toy I remember getting is my dad got me a drum set, and there's a
Nice.
picture of me in the little red footy pajamas, and I can't sit on the throne and reach the kick, so I'm standing and playing like this.
I love it.
And after that, it was like my record collection became my most important collection of anything, you know. I remember having, you know, Aerosmith and Styx and Kiss records when I was like 4 years old.
Right.
And like it molded my life. And like, who was the first band that you remember? Like that really touched and affected you?
Go for it, Tony.
Kiss.
Yeah.
I was a big comic book nerd as a kid.
Yeah.
And I think I was in about 4th grade, and my older cousin was up visiting in Alaska, and he brought home Kiss Destroyer, and I was like, "What's that?" And he goes, "This is Kiss," and I'm holding the record in my hand. Whoa. And he goes, "That's Gene Simmons. He spits blood and he breathes fire. And you see those boots?" And I go, "Yeah." And he had those dragon boots on, and I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "He steps on people with those boots and he kills them." I was like, "Fucking cool," you know. So, and then I remember when I first heard, I put the record on. My parents like had gone for the day or something. We had one of those big, like Sears console, like really wide,
the big oak things that weigh a ton.
But it has some beefy speakers, and that thing fucking cranked, right?
Yeah.
So I cranked that thing up like super loud, and I'm standing like in the middle of my living room, and that's the whole thing comes on with the newscast and the car crash and the way the song builds up and kicks in. It was like my spine was like a fucking thermometer, and then whoa shit, and I was like, wow, man, this makes me feel like I never felt like that before. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And so I was a big Kiss fan until about 6th grade, and then I branched out. As I remember, I went into a record store, and they had records all over the place, and I'd heard of Rush. Obviously, much more artistic music, right, than Kiss was. But I went up to the lady at the counter, and I was like, "Do you have other bands besides Kiss here?" And she laughed at me. And so then she's like, "Yeah." And I go, "Do you have a band called Rush?" And then I got that Rush 2112 album. I'm looking on the back, and they're all like kind of dressed up like ladies, sort of.
Yeah, the kimonos and the white silk.
Yeah, I'm like, this is the trip. But then again, I put it on the record. I'm also into sci-fi and like, you know, all that imaginative fantasy shit, and I was into D&D, all that kind of stuff. So all that concept album shit, just I love it, and you know, very influential. So that's probably what you wanted for an answer, but that's what you got.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I was going for. What about you, E?
So I was you know, raised kind of Jehovah's Witness, you know, kind of really sheltered. And so rock and roll was kind of kept from me until my dad's family would give me to my mom's family. And on my mom's side of the family was my uncle. And my uncle had a bedroom that I'd spend the night with him. In my earliest memories, he was a shredder guitar player, still to this day, and was quite ahead of his time. You know what I mean? And was already playing guitar very, very well before Eddie came out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when Eddie came out, it changed his life, right? And so I would sleep with him in his bedroom, and he would have all these, just like Tony was saying, Kiss was so different then because the mystique was so incredible.
Yeah.
Because all you could do is look, you know, all you could do is look at the posters and look at the jacket, and your imagination would just disappear into that Alive 2 jacket for me. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I'd open that jacket and I'd just be like, oh my God. And then the blood and the sweat that Gene's got in that, you know, and
that shot. Yeah.
In that shot, just like was really scary back then. That was way before Maiden, you know? Mm-hmm. And so, he had these huge posters on his wall, and he used to tell me, he'd say, if you shut your eyes for a little while, your eyes will adjust to the dark, and then you can open and see the Kiss posters better. He was just trying to get me to go the fuck to sleep, you know? but but I do that, you know, and that was my earliest memory of and then he played guitar and he had a voice box, right, Tony? You remember voice boxes, you know?
Oh yeah.
Like, you know, with Frampton and shit. And so I'd be like this little 4-year-old kid standing on the end of the bed doing the voice box parts to Frampton.
Oh,
you know?
cool.
Right.
So I didn't really have check this out, third grade, my grandmother and my mom, I ended up being raised kind of by my grandma too. And in third grade, she brings me to 1982 Diver Down. So like I saw After the Fire open and get booed off the stage, you know, don't turn around, you know, everybody's like, fuck you, we want Van Halen. And that's ultimately what did it for me. So she brings me there and I see Dave come out and I just could not believe how big rock and roll was and what it meant to be a rock star. And when I saw Dave come out at third grade and I was sitting on my uncle's shoulders, and he stood on the end of the stage after the first song and said, you know, whoa, hello, Seattle, how the fuck are you? You know, I was just like, wow, that's it. I know what I want to be.
Yeah.
You know, and I think I've been chasing that every fucking since.
Yeah.
And then music became, you know, like probably for everybody, it saved my life. It just became something, my coping mechanism, my escapism, the way to get over a girlfriend, how to deal with a bad teacher, you know, even when you had a toothache, you put some fucking Slayer on and said, get over it, you know?
Yeah, exactly that. Growing up in Wenatchee, there was no concerts. You know, the closest we had, there was a Seattle band called Rail, and they played
1, 2, 3, 4. What
are you living for? Rock and roll. They played a college dance, and when I was like a sophomore in high school, I looked like I was 9, but I could get into the college dances, and the upside to being like a tiny little kid is all the girls would dance with me like without hesitation because I wasn't threatening at all. You know, it's
right.
Like, you look like my friend's little brother. Sure, I'll slow dance with you. And I'm like face. And that was an amazing few years. And then like as soon as I graduated from high school, I was like, this town is in my taillights. You know, I am out of here. And I packed up everything I owned into a crappy beat up old station wagon and moved over here, and you know, and I've been over here ever since.
Where'd you end up? Where'd you end up? In Seattle?
Yeah, I lived with my dad for a year or so, him and his wife, in Renton, and then I was waiting tables and playing in bands, and I got an apartment in Kent, and we used to see the Metal Church guys at this 7-Eleven, and they used to buy us beer.
Nice.
And they would sit out in the parking lot, in the 7-Eleven parking lot, and drink beer with us.
Right.
The
different times.
Coolest guys in the world.
Yeah.
And like literally, they would be just like, we're just hanging out. And they were huge in Europe and Japan at the time. And even in Seattle, they just like weren't even making a wave.
Right.
You know? And it was criminal how underrated they were here.
It's still that way. It's still that way, you know.
Yeah.
They just slay over there.
Yeah.
You know?
And the nicest guys in the world, you know. I can't say enough nice things about those guys.
Yeah, they are super nice.
Yeah.
And they stood the test of time too, man. I mean, terrible about Steve Howe. I mean, I guess that's 2 singers down now in that band. That's or Mike Howe rather. It's a very sad thing, but what a voice on that guy. Anybody know what they're doing now? I saw something about they're working on new stuff. I guess they got a new singer going or something.
I think they've got. Did I hear that Johnny Marshall's back with them?
No, I think they got a brand new guy.
Okay.
A brand new guy, and I know the record is done and turned into the label.
Okay.
So there is something coming out.
Fantastic.
So, yeah. And
Yeah.
That's awesome that they're still going to keep going.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I
So-
love that they're not quitting, you know.
Yeah.
I think that, like a lot of us, I think Kurt kind of subscribes to the, if I'm not doing shit, there's this John Cougar thing going around right now that I saw on TikTok or something where he said, he was talking to Stephen King, and he said, if you don't make shit, your body and your mind will make shit up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's why they're both hypochondriacs. So I don't know. I think you got to make shit to keep healthy, so I don't, at some point, that's like with HellBelly, it just wasn't, it's just not about the people. It's about just keep making shit, and everything will be okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
what are your favorite places to play?
well, it depends on what year.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's valid. I went and saw the Swaggerlies down at Slim's last weekend, and I think Slim's is probably one of my favorite venues, as far as like, it's the perfect dive bar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Daryl's is just up the road from me. And Tony V's, I know you guys are like you guys were there a couple weeks ago, right? Tony, weren't you up there?
No, not me.
Okay. But Tony V's up in Everett is a great place.
Mm-hmm.
Played there a bunch, and it used to be called Jimmy Z's, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is it? Yeah, I think it's the same place.
Yeah, we used to play there all the time in the old days.
It was bigger. It was bigger when it was Jimmy Z's. I actually opened for Green Bay at Jimmy Z's back in the day.
Did you? I think we did actually a show with Sublime there.
Oh,
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, but they weren't Sublime yet, right? They were just kind of on the flyer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, they showed up fast.
They showed up fast.
Yeah, that's what good songs will do, though. That's one thing that I really appreciate about you, Eric. Both your solo stuff and with HellBelly is like, I could listen to a whole HellBelly album, and it's like, to me, very little filler. It's consistently, it's all good tracks. It doesn't seem like you guys are out to just, we got our 3 songs. We're going to just like crank out some bullshit. And let's face it, bands do that. A lot of bands do that, especially big bands now. You know what I mean? It's like they just sort of are phoning that shit in. And so I always, and I'm not just blowing smoke. I mean, I'm just.
No, that's the best compliment I could ever get, bro. Thank you. I really appreciate that, because people are like, why does it take you so long to make a record? That's why.
Yeah.
That's
craftsmanship. I mean, like Rome wasn't built in a day, right?
Yeah. I mean, if I write 40 songs, maybe 10 of them are going to make it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I just, and then that HellBelly stuff, Brian, he, Carl, I don't know if Fits of Depression. He was in Fits, and he kind of changed the way I thought about writing. And he's like, no, like when you said no filler, he's just brutal about no filler. Like, what are you saying there? And then you start to realize when you're under that microscope, how much filler you actually put in. Mm. So much so that, like, I remember, and I don't do this anymore, and I did it for decades. In between a vocal, I'd go, ooh, yeah, because my David Lee Roth shit, right? Or my Andy, Love Bone shit.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, ooh, ah, oh, yeah, uh-huh, right? And Brian looks over at me like the first, day we're jamming, and he goes, why are you doing that? I go, what do you mean? He goes, that's not you. It's something that you're doing to try to act like somebody else or something that's cool. Does it have anything to do with the song? And I'm like, no. He goes, so is this song really about you, or is it about what we're trying to make here?
Wow.
And that stuck with me. And that's why I think the Tango Wild record is I'm proud of it as I am, because of that,
Yeah.
There's no filler, So I appreciate that compliment, Tony, massively.
No, it's just speaking the truth, my friend.
I appreciate it.
From my perspective, I think it's important to take your time and craft your music, because we're not going to live forever, but our music's, well, hopefully will outlive all of us. Given the state of the world today, who knows? But in any event, we all have fallen friends who are musicians and idols, people we look up to. We all still can enjoy their music and will continue to, and that's a wonderful and beautiful thing. And so at that point, you know, like let's say you're a ghost looking back on life, like, oh no, don't play track 4. That shit was just some garbage to get this done. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. So
exactly.
So do you primarily write by yourself, or do you write, like, do you collaborate, or what's your process for writing songs? And Tony, you too.
Go for it, Tony.
Well, I tend to songs kind of like download me sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to work for them a little bit more, but I'm a guitar player. Obviously, I'm known for being a guitar player, but when I'm writing songs, I'm not intentionally, I think, trying not to think like a guitar player, because when you think like a guitar player, you know, everything's just riff oriented, right?
Yeah.
So you got to leave room for the vocals. When I was, you know, young, dumb, and full of cum, I was like, you know, doing the typical, just wanting to shred all the time and wanting to show off all the time. And everyone still regards me as a shredder, but if you really listen to the albums that we do, there's really not that much just flailing going on. There'll be little bits of it here and there, and that shit just gets boring, man. You know, it's like, if it's just like the same, because there's only 12 notes and you're just going to run scale so much, it's like there's a lot more you can do with emotion and mood. And so I tend to, like, but I'll get an idea. Sometimes I'll get a vocal idea of a hook in my head. Sometimes it'll start with a riff or whatever else, but a lot of times it sort of gets arranged in my head before I'll even pick up a guitar, because I've noticed over the years, if I start with a guitar riff, I'll be some kind of more repetitive that way, because I'll just do what's comfortable, or just what, I don't know if I'm making any sense, but
no, you are.
Writing in my head takes me away from the mechanics of the instrument and puts me in the pure musical sense of things, if that makes sense. So I try and work with that, and I've got a home studio. The way Mechanism basically worked in general was, me and Ryan both had home studios. We both would map out tunes. We'd bring them into the band room. There would always be open room for input from everybody. But we kind of had a policy of like, hey, if you want to change something, that's cool. Don't just say you don't like something, though. Come up with an idea or a direction we could take this. Instead of, sometimes you're working with people who are like, oh, I just don't like this. Like, well, what do you think we should do? Well, I don't know. I just don't like it. And that's like, well, what do you want me to do now? Throw fucking spaghetti against the wall for an hour? And until you like something, it's like, if you don't have something to say, shut the fuck up, and let's keep the train on the tracks and keep moving. You know what I mean?
Totally.
But so we had, you know, and Ryan and I had a pretty good chemistry for writing. Unfortunately, not so great at chemistry in other departments, but writing wise, we did quite well. And that's kind of the, I guess, the long and the short of it.
Yeah. So, like, I guess as far as writing for me, it's been a lifelong journey, and in what it started out as me just trying to do vocals over guitar player stuff, you know. And I was in my first band, I was in it for 10 years, so we kind of grew up together. Then I picked up the guitar because I didn't want to have to deal with guitar players, and I thought that I would do my own record, right? I'd write it all and I'd do it all, and I was in a band called Mojo Filter for a while, for about 6 or 7 years.
I remember that, man.
Yeah, and that band was just, now looking back on it, it was me trying to learn how to write songs, you know. And they were these super long 5-6 minute songs with all these different parts, and all they were really, looking back on it, was shoved together parts, right? So they weren't songs. And so when I got done with that, I took a little break, and I kind of got it in my head that I was better of a writer when, like, I kind of thought that, you know, I'm not comparing myself to Mick Jagger, but I need my Keith Richards, or I need my Joe Perry, or I need my, you know what I mean? I need somebody to kick ideas off of. And I kind of got in that mindset, which was kind of unfortunate, but it made me, in a way, hone that skill. And so then I went on the HellBelly trip and really, like, played not a submissive role, but like played my role as a number 2, and tried to really bring Brian's vision to fruition. And he gave me tons of freedom lyrically and melodically, completely. I wrote 30-40% of the melodies and stuff that's on there, and lyric stuff. But what that allowed me to do was start to look at songwriting differently. And so I think that I don't think I really came into songwriting myself until the last 3 years, where I can tap into an emotion, like you said, hear something, a melody in my head, and build on that. It starts like a little with a Lego, right? And just, or whether you're jamming a riff and you're like, wow, that has potential. I'm going to record it on my phone and come back to it. Or sometimes a girl pisses me off and I'll puke one in 6 seconds. You know what I mean? So, but now I feel like I've kind of matured to a point where now in this later part of my life, I'm going to Prince out a bit. I'm not comparing myself to him, but I'm going to write and write and write and write and write and record and just put as much shit out as I can. And I'm not going to, like when we did the Burn for the Moon stuff, I don't know if you've heard of that. That's like a little synth side project I did. I don't care what it is. I don't care what metal people think. I don't care what pop people think. I don't care what anybody thinks. If I want to make it, I'm going to make it.
Oh yeah.
Well,
that kind of honesty, I think, translates to people. You know what I'm saying? Like when people are doing things because it's a trend or because it's cool, for one thing, shit doesn't stay cool very long. Like try and follow the trend shit and get something going. By the time it's a trend, it's like you're just chasing you're chasing tomorrow or some shit. It's just not going to happen.
It's worthless.
Yeah, Eric, something that resonated with me with what you were just saying is you spending the time actually working on songwriting itself as a skill. And I think that there's a very limited amount of what's the word I'm looking for? Not influence, but
development.
Yeah, they're just, you don't hear people talking about songwriting. Like, there'll be guitar groups or drum groups or bass groups or all these different kinds of communities or whatever, right? People are talking about gear, they're talking about riffs, they're talking about techniques, they're talking about blah. But you don't see a lot of just plain talking about songwriting. And I think if there was more focus on that, we'd probably have a lot better songs and a lot better bands and stuff. Not that there's not a wealth of stuff out there. I mean, we do live in an era where it's dealer's choice now. We have access to whatever kind of music we really like. We're no longer in a situation where record labels can sort of dictate what the trends are. I mean, there's, I guess, probably in pop music and maybe country or other stuff that's still, major radio, in the public eye kind of shit. The kind of stuff that we're doing for the most part is sort of really realistically fringy for the modern music scene, at least in the United States. It's really hip hop and country music and pop stuff. And there's a lot of talented people. I mean, look at Lady Gaga. People can talk shit about her. I think she's one of the most talented people around. I mean,
you nailed it. You nailed it, man. Her songwriting's amazing.
It really is. It's just
that song Speechless. That song Speechless. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I totally agree. And Pink is another one. She writes her own stuff. She's got like kind of a rock side to her. She's definitely got the rock aesthetic of not giving a fuck what anybody else thinks.
Absolutely.
And
Billie Eilish blew my mind when I first heard her. I thought how fucking refreshing.
Yeah.
I thought like that is so refreshing. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I ran out, got it, and all my friends were like, "What the hell are you listening to?" And and I'm like, I'm listening to something that isn't the fucking same. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the song, I was going to say, I guess the way I was going to try and say it is songwriting is not a wasted effort, even if you don't end up using the song, because you're exercising a muscle and you're developing a skill set that you have to go through those hurdles to get. Like, it's like guitar players. I mean, we can play scales and we can play licks, and for the first couple of months, it's going to suck, and it's not wasted effort. It's developing muscle memory. It's learning the best ways to position your fingers and to keep your fingers as close to the fingerboard as possible so that you're not using, wasted motion, and play slow and develop that so that you're so that your hands just automatically know where to go. And I think doing it over and over with songwriting as well, you're developing like what lyrics you gravitate to and the way that you phrase things, and how you resolve the verse, and it's like you're developing a character, you're developing your sense of style, that while songs can have many different flavors to them, you're still going to have your thumbprint in whatever you're doing, yeah. And that should be celebrated.
Absolutely.
So,
and it's all about getting what I call your at bat. So you got to hone your skills, be ready for when the manager puts you on the plate, right? Yeah. And the manager and the plate is timing. So you have some adversity in your life. You have a health adversity, or you fall in love, or your kid, you're not getting along with your child. Can you use the skills that you've honed to take that time and knock it out of the park? Because I've noticed, I don't care, and I'm going to say this, I don't care if you're Iron Maiden or let's say super respected band versus a Justin Bieber. If you are going through something, it's going to speak to me. You know what I mean? So if it's authentic, and for the reason I say Justin Bieber is because I was not obviously a fan. I'd walk by my daughter's room and I'd be like, wow, that's good pop. Okay, we're doing it right. But a couple of years ago, I noticed, what are these songs coming out of the radio and that I'm hearing while I'm over at my ex's house, coming out of her room? And I realized he's going through something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so those songs, as of the last 2 or 3 years, I know like 7 or 8 of them by heart, and I love them. I think they're great songs because he was going through something, and it was the pitfalls of understanding that I was raised under a microscope and I just want to be a human being,
Yeah. And it's tough for the child stars in general, whether they're music stars. I mean, most of them kind of freaking blow their freaking,
right.
their minds. It's like, what's going on now? I just saw something in the news about, it doesn't matter. Some young girl star just got, was walking around on hallucinogenics in Europe naked or something. And she was like, used to be on Nickelodeon. I forget the girl's name, but it's just like, it's sad. It's just like, of course, there's thousands of other people doing that every day and no one even notices. That's kind of sad too. One other thing about songwriting is strange. I don't know if you guys have ever noticed this or could attest to this, but there's a lot of people, it seems like, that really consider that sort of to be like a magical skill you either were born with or you weren't. Like, especially a lot of people that play cover music because they just don't believe they could write a song, or maybe they just, they were starting out in their first girlfriend when they got their first guitar. No, that's stupid, and they just believed it. And everybody's going to tell you shit's stupid. I don't care who you are. Probably the longer you've been doing it, the more people will tell you that it's stupid. They just tell you that, like, for something to do, especially in the social media era where people have like almost no accountability. You know what I mean? And it's easy to get frustrated with that. But they're paying attention at least, right? It's like, well, I'm not talking about you, dude, so shut the fuck up.
Well, it's like I feel like I'm faking it all the time because, like, Tony, right? Like, just an absolute accomplished guitar player. One of those guitar players that when you watch him, if Tony puts his guitar on in the middle of a room, I don't care if you're 2 or you're 65 and you listen to anything, you're going to stop what you're doing and pay attention.
Yeah.
Flat out. There's no fucking way around it. Right. And so when guys like that are just absolutely just breathe talent, look at me and go, Well, you write great songs. I feel like an imposter, man. I feel like a great fucking imposter. It's
Well,
like, I don't even know what key I'm in, homie. You know what I mean?
yeah, well, I mean, I think the ideal thing is to kind of not know what key you're in. Even, you
Yeah.
know, Eddie Van Halen had a great whole spiel that he said was it's about learn all the rules so you can forget them. You know,
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, like the music theory concept, a fair amount of guys will bash on it and whatever else, and but everybody uses it to some extent, whether it's their own music theory or it's the adopted one, and they usually have a fair amount of common ground because if it doesn't sound out of key and bad, you're probably following some facet of music theory. But
yeah, that's all bullshit. We all need to know some. Yeah.
yeah, you're a great artist too with your singing and your playing too. I mean, you write.
Yeah.
Don't be selling yourself short, son. But thank you for the kind words. That was mighty nice of you.
Yeah. And
No, just like Tony doesn't know this, but I teach lessons, and I have a younger kid that is really getting into As I Lay Dying, and I might have to hand him off to you, Tony. But he wants to be able to do this sweep picking and all this stuff, and I showed him some videos of Tony, and he's just staring at them, and then he comes, so it's just you're a great player, you know what I mean? It's just one of those things.
And a great dude also.
Yeah.
I gotta call that out because like my friend John Smart, who passed away. John and I grew up together in Wenatchee. We had the same guitar teacher. And I have a lot of love for John. Great, nice guy. Great guitar player. And he was like, oh, when you're going to the Schenker show, check out Mechanism. This guy Tony plays guitar and he is fantastic. And any time John would like hit me with something, he'd be always on the mark. And I went and I was blown away by Mechanism. And then I reached out to Tony on Facebook and we became Facebook friends. But in addition to the Mechanism stuff, you just became such a good dude that I love like following your posts. And I love, the amount of love between you and Ginger. I just like, you guys are such a great couple.
I love that too. And
I absolutely love her. I mean, and I love you guys as a couple, and just like, you are a genuinely nice guy. And that's few and far between in the music industry. I mean, a lot of our friends are, of course, they're nice. Because they're our friends. But if you look at them from a lens of, if I didn't know them, would I think they were great? You are a genuinely good dude. And I love you, man.
Oh, I love you too, man. Thank you. I don't know if I can totally agree with that. I mean, I fuck up like anybody else does, and have my moments where, I sometimes am a little bit too candid with my thoughts online. So there's plenty of people that, have very much a different opinion of me than you do. But at the end of the day,
what do you want to be? You want to be beige? Fuck that. Be polarized.
No, I'm a pretty, I mean, I shoot from the hip. I'm a pretty genuine dude. And most of my life, I mean, I've either been like kind of loved or hated, but never ignored or rarely.
That's the key. I'd rather you hate me than that. I tell people just get in line, and that's just another line to get in. You know what I mean? I just don't want you to not notice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
and the thing about Tony is he, having that ability to be that up front online and speak your mind, you still have the ability. Like I rib a lot. Yeah. And I'll break balls, and it offends people a lot, and like Tony, one time we played a show together, and I don't even know if you remember this, Tony, but you walked off the stage. That was that one in Everett where Tina and Rick got married.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And I said, man, your wife must love your fingers. And you laughed your fucking ass off. Right. And I don't know if you remember that, but some people get offended at that, and I just thought that was a lot about his character. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
That's rock and roll, you know?
Yeah.
And I like to watch I like to watch a couple that's in love and having a good time with it and sticking together. It's keep posting that stuff. We
Yeah.
need that, bro.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, the world could certainly use a lot more love right now. I mean, there's just some crazy shit going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So
Yeah, I love that. Oh man. Yeah. So like talking about what your favorite clubs have been. Like what have been some of the coolest venues. So back in the day. So 90s, like what were the clubs that you gravitated to in like the 90s? I know there was like the Vogue and there was like all of those there was the off ramp.
Still it's El Corazon now.
El Corazon, yeah. There was the Under the Rail, which was kind of a cool place.
That was Under the Rail was a great place.
Yeah.
That stage was freaking like
phenomenal.
Yeah.
Do you remember the Color Box? I like that place.
Love the Color Box. And and there was a couple of like Meeker's Landing down in Kent was kind of cool.
Oh yeah, I played there a ton, man. That's the old Gypsy Rose's stomping grounds.
Yeah, love that place.
What was that place in Kent? There was a place China something or
South China Doll.
Yeah. I think that's what it was.
Oh, that was in Ballard, I think.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. China Chef was in Ballard. South China Doll was in Kent, I believe.
Okay. I remember them just having a fire system, but like, the classic ones. I love the Phoenix. We got the chance to play the Phoenix. We played the Phoenix a couple times above ground. We got to open for a national there one time. I remember I was a kid and that was really cool.
Yeah.
We never got to play Rock Candy. Did you, Tony? Did you ever play Rock Candy?
A couple times. Yep.
Rock Candy was cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it was very cool.
I've never played the Croc. I've never played the Croc in my life.
We're on the third Croc now.
Yeah. And I just how shit falls. You just sometimes never, I never played the Croc. And I've never played the Central.
Oh, okay.
Right?
You should do Porn Jam with me this year at the Central.
Yeah. Yeah. Dan's band always plays. Dan Tyson.
Yeah, it's on my bucket list. I mean, it's really hard to be from Seattle and say you haven't played the Central.
Yeah. Yeah. Dan just moved back from LA.
Oh, did he really? I didn't. I knew he'd moved away, but I didn't know he was back. That's cool.
Yep,
he's
back.
Such a funny motherfucker. We did this.
He was in.
We did this live day at KSW thing, and there's just tons of musicians there or whatever standing around in this front room.
Yeah.
And they had just played, and he comes walking out, and he goes, "Hey, I got a black. Is anybody seen a black leather jacket?" He was like. And everybody's there's got a black leather jacket. It was just I don't know. It was pretty fucking funny, just the way he said it and everything. And he's always been great. His sister too.
Yeah, Dan and I started. How we met is we were both working at Microsoft, and they had these. They used to have these user groups, and there was a guitarist user group, and I was a contractor, but they let me in, and I was posting, and I became friends with like. Cliff Garrett and Paul Bonrud and Dan Conley and Rob Svilpa and all these other Seattle guitar players. And because of Dan and I having the same kind of sense of humor, people like gravitated to us. And he was on episode 1.
Oh, nice.
So Dan is going to be back. I'm going to have him and Jay on along with Steve Bergstrom from the Finger Guns. And they are 3 of the funniest fucking people in the planet. I probably will just mute myself and just sit there quietly and just let them go because they're absolutely hilarious. I've known Steve for 25 years and and Dan too. I mean, I worked on Windows 98. So yeah, I've known him.
Wow. That's a ways.
Yeah.
That's a ways.
And it's funny because like rock and roll doesn't pay the bills no matter it. Like talent is not the benchmark for being able to support yourself. A lot of it is opportunity and connection.
I mean, relationships.
Right. And the nice thing about like the Seattle area is we have all of these amazing musicians who are also amazingly technical people. You know, I'm a computer nerd. Tony, amazing graphic designer and 3D artist, and you know, like all of that you do. You know,
Yep.
Dan worked with him at Microsoft. Paul Bonrud, you know, he's signed to Frontier Records and he's working on album number 3. And you know, he's he's at Microsoft. And Cliff Garrett is, you know, he was working on Xbox, and amazing sweet picker.
Right.
You know, I mean, like there's the amount of technical expertise in our musical like community. It's stunning, you know?
I'm not so sure it's just only in our community. You know, I mean, I watch a ton of YouTube videos to learn how to do all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of, especially coding stuff with some of the different, you know, AR things that I do.
Yeah.
And it's a trip how many of these gnarly egghead programmers will be on there, and they'll have a fucking rad guitar hanging on the wall behind them or whatever else. And then I'll go and look, and sure enough, they got a whole shredding YouTube guitar channel, and they're playing like Steve Vai and shit too. And you know, you walk down these guys on the street, you never think twice about like they were some guitar god or whatever else. But sure enough, you know, they can apparently put that mind of theirs to whatever they want to. And
that's
that
a
was
good
always
point.
a goal of mine. I had a kind of good life lesson. I was in upstate New York and for a year in my high school years, and I would traditionally sleep through my first hour period every day because, you know, I've been up late and whatever. And I had this little teacher named Mr. Minervini. He was probably like 80 or something. Probably had to be like as close to his last year. And I'm in my typical, you know, assuming. And I hear this little old man go, "Today, kids, we're going to talk about the meaning of life." And I was like, somehow, even being the young, dumb idiot that I was, I understood the value of listening to somebody who's like 80 who was going to talk about the meaning of life, because obviously, you know, that's a life well lived and a long life, and especially being a teacher. And he's obviously seen a lot of probably kids come and go. Anyway, he basically broke it down to the meaning of life is fulfilling your potential. And I kind of was unsure on exactly what that meant, but as my vocabulary I just got a little bit better, I realized it's basically trying to, you know, explore what you're capable of and take that to the furthest extent that you can. And I've always kind of considered myself like a Renaissance man starter kit, you know what I mean? I try and approach everything with that same kind of mindset. And I'll tell you what, there's plenty of stuff that I suck at, no matter how much I've tried. There's just certain things that people are just naturally, you know, have a proclivity to, and certain things they don't. But it's always neat to start a new journey and learn new things and like new musical styles. I've been getting into like the Hank Williams picking stuff, where you're playing like several melodies at the same time and all that. It's very difficult for me to do because I've been so focused on precision of synchronizing, you know, my right and left hands for a very specific melody or one kind of thing, to the point where even like I can play like keyboards pretty well, but my ability to have the two countering melodies going on is extremely limited, just because I've built up so many neural connections, I guess, for this synchronization. Right. And
that's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I probably could put in the time and effort. Then it also gets down to like right time. I mean, how much time do we all have to put into things? Even finding time for music can be very difficult. It's not like we're all living in our mom's basement or whatever, right? And we got unlimited time and somebody else is paying the bills, and God bless the people that are and can do that. And that's not a diss. If you have somebody that's going to support your art wholeheartedly, then man, that's what we need. I mean, if you think about it, in the era of composers and all that, right? Kings and stuff were sponsoring those guys. Like,
yeah.
You know, the musicians have always had some kind of muse, like, or a support system. That hasn't existed for a very long time.
Right.
And even just in our society in general, it's getting tougher and tougher, right? Because we have the inflation, cost of living's crazy. I mean, that's awesome that those guys are working at Microsoft. They can afford to sit around and do sweep picking because they're not like probably super worried about where their next meal is going to come from and stuff.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Unfortunately, more people are probably worried about that now than have been in some time, and hopefully,
in probably in our lifetime. Yeah. It's unfortunate that, like, growing up, you know, my mom was a single mom, and it was my sister and I, and my mom worked a lot, but we had a house, you know. I mean, we rented a house, and it's the idea of a single income providing a house and, you know, raising 2 kids and putting food on the table and paying the bills. It's like, that doesn't exist.
No.
You know, that, I mean, my mom worked at J.C. Penney's, you know, I can't imagine a retail job like that paying for a house and supporting 2 kids.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
I had somebody ask me one time, you made me think of something. Recently it might have been a little while ago, but they asked me, and it was very abrupt, you know, do you wish you would have made it? And I said, what do you mean, like, make it? Now, you know, been a big rock star. And I'm like, well, that's the problem with what's going on these days, is that you think that if you can pay your bills with it, you've made it. And that's just so odd to me, because that never was the focus, right? You know, I mean, sure, it would have been nice, but what I said back to them is, I have made endless amounts of records. I've played the coolest shows. I made those records on my own terms. So I didn't have some producer or some label telling me I had to change who I am.
Yeah.
I got to see my kids because I wasn't touring constantly. I'm still alive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I don't know what you're talking about that I haven't made it. You know, in fact, I think I made it better. I'd rather be me than CC DeVille. Now, I'm not saying that, you know,
that's
nothing against CC,
account, right?
Nothing against CC DeVille, but, like, you know, I would have chose my life than a Hollywood, you know, empty mansion and a healthy coke habit, you know, and not seeing my kids get raised. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So,
yeah,
you know, so I think that that's what's happening nowadays, is you have this influx of people going, you know, are you, you know, it's all over. Do you want to know how to make money off your music? Are you going to make money off your music? Are you going to make money? That's commercialism. That's not music, you know?
Yeah.
It's only been in the last, you know, through the 70s, the late 60s and 70s, into the 80s, where musicians were actually revered and paid, right?
Right.
You know, from the dawn of time before that, they were kicked on the curb, like, you know, they were looked at as you lowly piece of shit performer, you know? Yeah. So I wonder how many people would make music and make art if they knew nobody was going to listen, you know?
Yeah.
And that's my point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is that, you know, not to be too long-winded, but art comes from everywhere, like your technical applications that you're talking about from people and stuff like that. I don't know. I just think the best art comes when it's not commercially motivated, you know?
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I agree with that.
I heard a pretty interesting concept from a guy who actually is a digital artist, not a musician, but I think this tracks kind of across the board. And he was talking about a lot of people, you know, artists and whatever, they want to get these jobs, and then they take the work that they do for their jobs and they put that in their portfolio, and they think that's how you think you're going to get the jobs you want. And he goes, that's not at all how you get the jobs you want. You get the jobs you want. Of course, you do that to keep the lights on, but you do your passion projects. You do the shit that you're about. That has nothing to do with what's cool or what the trend is or what the people want. You do what comes from here, and you fucking go for it hardcore, and you attack that shit like your life depends on it. And then when that gets out there and the people see that, then the people that like that are going to be the ones that gives you the jobs that are like that, and you're going to do the kind of shit that you like. And that's kind of, I think, a lot of musicians, for instance, throughout the course of my life, they're like, "Oh yeah, well, dude, I'm gonna get in this cover band so I can just like not have to have a job, and then I can just play music all the time." I'm like, "Well, you are getting another job. I mean, that's just a job then. I mean, you're not saying you're doing that because you really want to. You're just gonna go, and then inevitably, almost across the board, that will take over their life, right? Because you got to have fucking 3, 4, 5 sets of fucking music that 4 or 5 hours of music, and you got to keep up with new stuff that's coming out. And whereas a time for an original band fit in there, some guys, I guess, if they have unlimited time, can do that, but a lot of people can't, right? So
You nailed it. That's like that Nashville curse, right? Everybody goes down to Nashville and then they end up being in a cover band and they stay super busy. And then they wake up 20 years later and they're like, I never did what I came to do, you know?
Yep.
Or they,
I saw a
or they
funny
wash out
cartoon.
and come home.
Right. I saw a funny cartoon the other day. It was a bunch of dudes in a kitchen, and they all look kind of like, grizzly old kitchen dudes. One of them's washing dishes, and one of the guys standing next to him goes, well, I'm sorry to tell you this, but here in Nashville, we all sing and play guitar. So it was like, I had a little bit of an experience like that moving down here. Up in Alaska, there were hardly any musicians that were really trying to like really, have a band practice and try and play a show or do anything kind of structured like that. So when you found somebody else that was doing it, didn't really matter what kind of music they're playing. It was a love in. It was like, really, tell me about what you're doing. Oh, it's so cool. Oh, what kind of guitars you got? Can I play your guitars? Rah, rah, rah. Granted, we were kids, like, so, there's that little kind of eyes of the child thing going on. But I came down here, and of course, it works very well for like picking up girls up there. An ongoing joke up in Alaska is you don't really get a girlfriend, you just get your turn, right? So, there weren't that many chicks up there in comparison. Like, it was a great place to refine your game, though. But I remember moving down here, and I was at some party and told some chick I was in a band and thought, hey, it's gonna be my hot ticket to paradise here. And she looks at me, she goes, oh, really? And then she's like, that guy's in a band, 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 that guy's. And I was like, that girl's in a band. That girl's probably way talented than you are. Well, it's just like, wow, that is just never going to be a pickup line I could ever use again. Because it was like there's just tons and tons of musicians, and I was obviously like super young then, and our band was getting a lot of attention. We were playing with a bunch of older guys, like probably my age now, and they were visibly pissed about the whole thing, and I still don't really get that. I mean, I see young bands like Steve's Kids, Sin Circus, doing well, and some of these other young bands are super talented. The guys in Halo, I like them a lot when they were still doing their thing. That Josh Kane guy,
we need them, man.
Man, that's the future, right?
Yeah, we need them.
Yeah, well, it's gonna help to have some badass dudes like HellBelly back on the scene to inspire people again, man.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably gonna sound real dickish, but I haven't been feeling like. I mean, there's definitely some great talent out there. Don't get me wrong, but it just doesn't seem. Things seem. I guess we're all in that post-COVID realm. Things seem kind of disjointed and disconnected, and just not. I don't know. I'm excited about HellBelly coming back because I just sort of feel like that's going to be like some energy that is just really fucking needed. So
fucking rad.
And I mean, it kind of bulldozed a lot of the clubs too. Like a lot of the places are just gone, and so.
Yeah, losing Louis is a huge loss, man.
I mean, that was a huge loss.
He was such a great helper of the scene. With Tony, it's so funny, Tony B and Louis G, right? With Tony in the North End, Louis in the South End. I mean, it really made for awesome rock and roll bookends of the whole city, really, kind of. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And him. And it's really weird. He's taken off and like he's sort of just like I think sort of left this behind. Like nobody seems to know how to get a hold of them, or anybody I've talked to that has says, yeah, he just really doesn't want to talk to anybody. So, but I guess that can happen, right? Burnout or whatever. But I love the guy, I miss the guy. A place I'd really like to play that's a newer place since I've been doing the gigging is that whole Spanish ballroom place in the
McMinimans.
thing or what over
Yeah,
there.
I've seen that. It looks like a great place.
Have you actually been there yet?
No.
It's pretty neat. It's like 5 stories or 4 stories or something, and they have like a different themed restaurant and a bar on every floor. And then like whatever the second or third floor is that big ballroom, and it's all like old school, like hardwood floors, and
Oh, wow.
I'm sure it probably doesn't sound that great until you get some people in there because all the reflection, but it's just a cool fucking vibe. Just that it almost feels like you're going back in time to go there.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. Yeah. Those like those kind of very elegant spaces, those are a cool place to see a show. The Baltic Room on Capitol Hill. It's got a really gorgeous space. They usually do like acoustic nights, and it's got almost like a coffee shop vibe to it, but it's very like it's very just beautifully decorated, and those kind of places they feel like it feels like a ballroom, and to see a metal band or a hard rock band in a ballroom is fucking cool.
Yeah.
It's like an event.
Theaters too are always fun, right?
Yeah.
Like it's one place I've always wanted to play is the Paramount. Still never got to play there. Love the acoustics in that place.
Yeah.
But it's a trip how I remember going to see like Dream Theater back there back in the day, and the place seemed so huge.
Yeah.
And then I went and saw Soundgarden on one of their last tours. I think it's the last time I went there, and I was like, wow, this place isn't as big as I remember it being. It's kind of funny as you get to play, I guess, bigger places. Some of the places don't seem quite as big, but still the nostalgia of that room. The Moore Theater too, never got to play there. Never got to have an experience with the Ghost, but that's another really cool, iconic room. These corporations have a lot of those rooms on lock, though, man. I mean,
yeah, they do.
They're controlling so much stuff now, and it's like, even though record labels are no longer kind of in that control situation, I guess, for live music. I mean, there's like Live Nation and a couple other companies. I think there's a Seattle Theater Group or something that controls the Moore Theater and the Paramount.
Yeah.
I looked into all that and submitted, to try and get in there and whatever else. But basically, they just are serving existing tours that are going on. So like, unless you're already on one of those bills or a tour that's coming through here, I don't know that there's a way for any kind of local to get on those stages.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if they do some kind of like all local event, or JSW does live days at one of those venues or something, maybe, I don't know, but I sure would love to get it in there to this day.
It is crazy though when you come when you come back and look at the Moore or one of those venues and you go, wow, I used to think I played bigger venues than this. It's pretty good because it just was so grandiose that, it's a big deal. You know what I mean? Definitely a big deal. I wanted to make a comment though, like I say this and I put my foot in my mouth all the time, but I'm really a crusader on this. Along with COVID, I think we've got complacency and pandering in the rock or the live community in regards to, we kind of, even though we loved each other, we always kind of told each other we sucked, you know what I mean? And we would challenge each other. And I'm into music scenes, don't get me wrong, but just to tell your friends they're good because they're your friends is like a real slippery slope. Because then what happens is everything gets homogenized and nobody's trying to really up their game and be different and kind of kick the door through, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that people are scared to offend. People are scared to piss their buddies off and be rock and fucking roll. And I think that rock and roll intrinsically is polarizing, and I think we're lacking that a little bit right now,
Yeah. I think you can support your friends without blowing smoke up their ass. I think you can say you guys didn't have a great night, or the like not crazy about the new songs. I really wish you guys would, play more of this because this is the stuff I dig. And you can say it without being condescending, and you can say it without, but I mean, I think of my group of friends, and most of them are musicians, and most of them won't hesitate to say that sucks, or
Right.
or yeah, I'm not digging that song. I don't like, oh, I don't like what you're doing there. And I'll internalize it and go, okay, yeah, you went to GIT, so you clearly, you kick my ass. So I'm going to be like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to give your opinion a lot more credence than, my daughter saying it's just too loud, or,
Right.
So I will definitely, I'm open to all the criticism, and I'm not thin skinned in that I get offended or I get my feelings hurt when somebody says that I suck at something. I'll try and I'll measure it against who's giving me the criticism and adjust accordingly, and like from my friends, it can be as harsh or as brutal or as savage as they want, because I know they're my friends, and it's not coming from a place of being a dick. It's coming from a place of love and busting balls.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
And
yeah,
what I get a little, what I kind of mean is, so you're on a 5-band bill, and you play the show, and there's one band there that you really dig, and then maybe your buddy's band is there, and so you caught a little bit of one band, you caught half of the other band, and then you spilled your guts onto the fucking stage and could barely breathe when you got off the fucking stage. And then the next morning, some band that you've never known, that you don't even know, that's played 5 shows, is going to get on there and start bad talking the bands because they were standing out in the parking lot and not watching them play. It's that kind of thing where it's like, if you put your time in and you write good music and you do it, then eventually people are not going to be able to stay in the parking lot. There's no way around it. That's how music works. But when you feel like you should have a captive audience because I'm the singer in the band, you know how many times I've been just completely, and it's only in the last end of HellBelly was, that dickhead singer from HellBelly shows up right before, it's his time to play and doesn't watch any of the other bands. That's because I don't want to talk my voice out. I want to be prepared, and I have my process. And fuck you, I don't live for you. I live for me. So that was my point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Honestly, man, if a band's attendance or audience that's paying attention to them is greatly affected by the couple guys in the other bands being in the audience or not being in the audience, then I have 2 fucking words for you. Work harder. What the fuck? It's fucking not other bands' jobs to get the word out for you and whatever else. And here's the deal, man. You could create a carburetor that makes every car in the world run on tap water. But if you don't get the word out about it, right, that's something that everybody would want, right? Everybody. But if people don't know about it, people don't fucking know about it. And then if you haven't promoted it, then you go attack the world and go, the world sucks because I invented this fucking carburetor. Nobody's buying it. It's like, what carburetor are you talking about? What show are you mad about? What, they don't promote the shit. They don't do anything. You probably have dealt with this, Eric. You get a bit of a draw. You get some people on the bill with you. They've been bugging you maybe for a while to do it. They don't fucking do a thing. They don't promote fucking nothing. They just show up, oh, we're fucking playing with so-and-so. We don't have to. There's going to be a big crowd there. It's like, motherfucker, I ain't done building my fan base yet. I want fresh blood all the time. I want
all the time. Exactly.
I want to play with bands that work. And then they'll be like, oh, you're clicky. You only want to work. Yeah, I want to work with bands that actually hustle and give a shit and aren't just, that whole sense of entitlement thing is what I think you're talking about a bit there.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of built in and from our education system now. Like, there used to be where you got grades, and if you didn't, and if you fucked up, you had to go back and do that shit over again. That doesn't exist anymore, right? Is that good for society? No. Is it maybe good for some kids' egos? Probably, but guess what? The fact that we maybe got spanked here and there or cried ourselves to sleep one of a time is what built character and made us decent human beings. Instead that people like get the fuck away with every single thing and get a pat on the back for it. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't support the fucking everybody gets a trophy for showing up mindset, because you know what that does? It gives you a whole lot of mediocrity.
And that's I think where we're at a bit right now.
Yeah, we're seeing it. That's exactly right, and that's why I say
it's like the dichotomy is like Kanye West saying, "Oh, I'm a musical genius," and then you've got Jimi Hendrix when somebody says, "What's it like to be the best guitar player in the world?" and he's like, "I don't know. I don't like compliments. They keep me from trying to do better."
Right. What do you do with the compliment? I mean, it's nice, but there's nothing you can do with it except for file it in the category of I'm cool now. I've reached my 100th. You know, one of them. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm very gracious and always appreciate all the kind things. But somebody tells you something, it's like if I play something for somebody and say, "Hey, man, what do you think?" I'm asking them what they think. I'm not going, "Hey, why don't you just tell me some really nice shit about myself?" You know what I'm saying? It's like they're, "Oh, you know, the guitars seem a little bit weird there," or "Man, you should have done." I can work with that. I can use that shit. You know what I'm saying? And then there is certainly people that they just want to say shit to try and tear you down and whatever else, and it's usually very transparent. And it's like my outlook on that is kind of like, "Hey, I'm a humanitarian, man. If fucking saying that shit to me made your life a little bit better, happy to be there."
Right. Echo chamber shit though. You're right.
And, and I think you also have to balance that with, if you're going to get a big head over every compliment, then you also kind of have to get you also have to kind of take a nut shot for every insult, because they're coming from that same place where, like, if I don't know you, the compliment means much less. And the same with the criticism. It's like, you don't know what I've done to achieve that. So you trying to put it into a box that only you understand doesn't mean anything to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know? But by the same token, it's like, I can't let a compliment take me out of, like, I can't let a compliment put me in their box either. It's like, well, I appreciate that. Thank you. That sounds like you were trying to be nice. I'll be gracious about it. But it's like, it's not the same as someone that I really respect and appreciate saying, "Dude, you're onto something there. Keep working on that and you're going to get it." You know, that means a lot more.
100%.
Yeah.
And could you imagine being an artist that gets on stage, and while you're on stage, you're thinking about how many people are there and not necessarily in your performance?
Yeah.
Or
you're this going to blow up Facebook later? How many Instagram likes am I going to get?
Right.
It's
you're in the middle of your song and you're thinking about who's in the parking lot. Wow. You know?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, like that's really going to be helping your performance anyways. Well, that just goes to show the kind of level of focus and why probably people are in the parking lot, because that kind of mindset is probably churning around the back of their head, and it's eating up. That's why I said, like, you go after what you're passionate about and you attack that shit like your life depends on it. You know, if you're sitting around worried about, like, "Oh man, I just saw a really good ad about some fucking new French fries at McDonald's today," and you're not in the moment, then you're probably not going to be doing your best work, you know?
And we've all done it.
Sure. Fuck yes, we have. I mean, fucking, I played a couple shows on acid, actually. And that was weird. I mean, I thought I was going to be able to do pretty good, but the amount of things you can be distracted by when you're on acid in an environment like that, it's like, it was really a trip. You know what I mean? Like maintaining, like at that point, a curtain could become incredibly interesting, you know, or who even knows? You got the lights, you got all that stuff.
Yeah. There's been times when I've looked back on somebody filming or something and I watch a fuck up, and I'll remember that the reason I fucked up is because I was thinking about, like, those really good chicken strips we had at lunch, you know?
Yeah, man. Well, as musicians, a lot of us get to a point where food isn't as regular of a thing as it has been at certain points of our life. You know what I mean? Where it's like, you know, you learn to appreciate food. I recently lost a bunch of weight, but I put a whole bunch on. I remember when I went from full starving musician to strip club DJ. And I started making pretty decent money doing that. And I put on a whole bunch of weight fast. It's like, what happened to you, Tony? 13 coins. They have really good steak, fucking
Right.
Because you can go eat, then all of a sudden you do it quite a bit,
Yeah, for sure.
Everybody's first album should just be called The Ramen Days.
Man, those first few records, I looked so good.
Right?
Yeah.
Rock and roll skinny, man.
Yeah.
Boone's Farm and AMPM 99-cent burgers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Plus, young metabolism helps, right? So.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Nice.
Wow.
Cool.
What a great time.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to wrap it. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate this. This was a good hang, man. This was a good time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, appreciate you hanging with you guys. It's been fun. It's been cool getting to know both you guys a little better.
Yeah, you too. And I'll probably reach out again at some point and like mix it up with different group of people and include you guys if you're interested.
Sure, absolutely.
I'm always interested. Always interested. I appreciate what you're doing. I love now I love you. I love Tony to death, deepest of my heart. Great guy.
Much appreciated, man. You're a brother now.
Absolutely. Hey, and just to be shameless and plug,
Please.
Go see some HellBelly this summer and buy Tango Wild. You can get it April 14th, and we'll be out with that band playing tons of fucking shows. So, come out and see some rock and roll.
And look in the comments and you'll find the links to all this. So
cool.
Right on. So thank you guys so much. It's been great talking with you.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having us, Carl. You rule, brother.
Thank you, buddy.
You rule.
Have a great
night.
Love
you, Tone. Take care, brother.
Love you too,
all right.
bro.
Love you guys.
Bye-bye.
All right, man. Bye.